Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. Chapter 16 of the lecture of the opening of the eyes by President Ikeda, page 151 of this lecture. Shakabuku, a lion's roar of great compassion to refute error and spread good. And as I said, while I read this, remember the last point that he made on page 150, never forget to challenge fundamental darkness at the crucial moment. In other words, never forget to challenge the efforts of the devil of the sixth heaven in your own life at the moment that you're being attacked. When you're trying really hard and you're meeting great difficulty, obstacles, and things don't seem to be going your way, you don't seem to be receiving protection. These are the whole issues that are involved in this Gosho, right? Shakabuku, a lion's roar of great compassion to refute error and spread good. Okay? So when you challenge fundamental darkness, what is that? Okay, so again, that's what this is just saying. You refute error and spread good. Okay? Whenever you challenge fundamental darkness. Do you understand that? And the crucial moment is whenever fundamental darkness has arisen to obstruct your
judgment.
Yeah, to obstruct your path. You with me? All right, so here's the Gosho itself. Question. This is from the Daishonin, from the Gosho. You insist, this is a, he's posing a question to himself. He says, you insist that the followers of the Nembutsu, Pure Land, and Zen schools will fall into the hell of incessant suffering. This shows that you have a contentious heart. This is, again, him postulating this against himself in his own writing. You understand? This shows that you have a contentious heart. You yourself are in danger of falling into the realm of the Asuras, the world of anger. Moreover, it is said that in the Peaceful Practices chapter of the Lotus Sutra, he, a practitioner of the latter day, should not delight in speaking of the faults of other people or scriptures. He should not display contempt for other teachers of the law. It is because you are going against this passage in the sutra that you have been abandoned by heaven. Is it not? Yeah, you're all going to go like, huh? Right? So again, he had heard his opposition saying this kind of thing. So he postulates this in his Gosho as a question to himself that he will now answer. I suppose the learned priests of the time think it is only natural that one should have doubts about this. Therefore, no matter how I explain and try to persuade my own disciples, they still cannot seem to overcome their doubts, but behave like ichkantikas or persons of incorrigible disbelief. Therefore, I have quoted these passages of explanation from Tintai, Myolo, and others in order to silence their ungrounded criticisms. These two methods of shoju and shakabuku are like water and fire. Fire hates water. Water detests fire. The practitioner of shoju laughs with scorn at shakabuku. The practitioner of shakabuku laments at the thought of shoju. When the country is full of evil people without wisdom, then shoju is the primary method to be applied, as described in the Peaceful Practices chapter. But at a time when there are many people of perverse views who slander the law, then shakabuku should come first, as described in the Never Disparaging chapter. It is like using cold water to cool yourself in the hot weather, or longing for a fire when the weather turns cold. Grass and trees are kindred to the sun. They suffer in the cold moonlight. Bodies of water are followers of the moon. They lose their true nature when the hot weather comes. In the latter day of the law, however, both shoju and shakabuku are to be used. This is because there are two kinds of countries: the country that is passively evil and the kind that actively seeks to destroy the law. We must consider carefully to which category Japan at the present time belongs. Okay, do you understand all of that, what he just said, what he's talking about? Let's let President Ikeda start to explain it, and then I'll jump in where I think I need to. But again, do you understand? In the latter day, however, both shoju and shakabuku are to be used. Why? Because this is the Buddhism of the sowing in the latter day of the law. And what does that Buddhism of the sowing encompass? the entire land of Jampovipa, the whole earth. There will be many countries. It's not just India or just China or just Japan. We're in the latter day. Canada's in there, Denmark's in there, Russia's in there, everywhere's in there. How can all of those countries be associated in the same manner as countries that are filled with slanders of the law, Buddhist countries in Asia? Do you understand? Non-Buddhists don't slander the law. They don't know to. Do you understand? All right, so he says, compassion is the heart of Buddhism. Okay? So what he's trying to explain to you, what we're going to get into, is why do we do this process of shakabuku? Okay, which is active refutation, right? Compassion is the heart of Buddhism. It is not only an expression of the enlightened state of Buddhahood, it also lies at the foundation of Bodhisattva practice, which means it's inseparable for both life conditions, correct? Mm-hmm. As we have already seen earlier in the opening of the eyes, Nichiren Daishonin asserts that a true votary of the Lotus Sutra is one who excels in compassion and forbearance. He writes, as regards my ability to endure persecution and the wealth of my compassion for others, I believe they, the great teachers Tentai and Dingyo, would hold me in awe. The compassion of the Lotus Sutra combines both love and sternness. This is very important for you to understand, because this is what we've been talking about all this time. In the latter day of the law, and anybody that doesn't understand what I'm saying, please stop me. In the latter day of the law, an age when evil is persistent and deep-rooted, karmic, those who take it upon themselves to lead people out of the darkness must be prepared to battle unceasing obstacles. This will be even more so in the case of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, whose mission it is to lead all humanity to enlightenment. The votary's ability to endure hardship and persecution derives from what might be called a stern fatherly compassion or spirit of tough love to prevent people of the latter day from straying onto the path of slander of the law. Now, does everybody understand what the difference between shoju and shakabuku is? Shoju is to be easy about it. Shoju would be the way we talk to mom. Okay? We don't like get in her, she's a Christian. We don't get in her face and go, oh, you're a Christian, you're good. No. Okay? But if I was talking to a Zen person, the Daishonin has specifically said, you better call him out and tell him you're not supposed to be doing that. Okay? There's no Gosho that says, tell mom not to be an evangelical Christian. You understand? All right. And there's no doubt about which is the superior teaching. You understand that too, right?
But we don't tell mom that, but we show her.
No, we show her. Again, this is about compassion that combines both love and sternness. Now, if she started to come back at us and start to slander the Gohonzon or our practice, then you've heard me. I would go straight up in your face. And that shuts it down real fast, right? Always.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So she respects that I know what she respects me. Yeah. That's the life that I've lived, that I've earned that. Okay? I don't have to be in her face. Do you understand? And she's my mom, so I carry her anyhow. All right? So, I start at the top again. In the latter day of the law, an age when evil is persistent and deep-rooted, those who take it upon themselves, all of us, to lead people out of darkness must be prepared to battle unceasing obstacles. This will be even more so in the case of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, whose mission it is to lead all humanity to enlightenment, those that are going to attain Buddhahood in their present form. The votary's ability to endure hardship and persecution derives from what might be called a stern fatherly compassion or spirit of tough love to prevent people of the latter day from straying onto the path of slander of the law. They tell the truth. They're strict. They don't let people fool themselves, BS themselves into continuing to manifest causes that cause their own happiness. They clearly express the fact that unhappiness is a reflection of you, nothing else. In the opening of the eyes, Nichiren emphasizes this tough love aspect of the Lotus Sutra. The mystic law is described as the seed of Buddhahood of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. What is that? That's actual Ichinen Sanzen. The object of devotion for observing the mind. It is the only means for freeing all people of the latter day from suffering. It's the only means to achieve Buddhahood in your present form in the latter day of the law. Do you understand? That's the teaching. You either have faith in that or you don't. If you believe in the teaching, you understand it is the only way to accomplish that in this time period. All right? The Buddha's compassion in planting this seed in people's lives is not only characterized by a deep caring for their happiness and welfare, but also by strict rebuke of slander of the law. So the Buddha's not motivated by showing everybody how much he knows. The Buddha's not in it for self-glory. The Buddha is in it to correct error. Do you understand? All right, so this is because people cannot actualize the principle of attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. What would that mean? What's he saying? This is because people cannot attain actual Ichinen Sanzen as long as their hearts are clouded by the darkness of delusion and disbelief, right? Actual Ichinen Sanzen involves eradicating the effect of the devil of the seven and seeing your true identity for what it is, the Buddha. Do you understand?
Yes.
I'll go back up a little bit. Okay. Where it says, it is the only means for freeing all people of the latter day from suffering. The Buddha's compassion in planting this seed in people's lives is not only characterized by a deep caring for their happiness and welfare, but also by strict rebuke of slander of the law. This is because people cannot actualize the principle of attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime as long as their hearts are clouded by the darkness of delusion and disbelief that causes them to denigrate the correct teaching or commit slander of the law, right? They can't attain Buddhahood if they are committing slander of the law. Do you understand?
Yes.
Earlier in this treatise, everybody's with me, right?
Yes.
Earlier in this treatise, the Daishonin discusses the object of devotion of sowing, the Gohonzon of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, by citing the great teacher Dingyo as saying, the sutras that the other schools are based upon give expression to a certain measure to the mother-like nature of the Buddha. But they convey only a sense of love and are lacking in a sense of fatherly sternness. Why? Because they're not teachings that allow for you to attain Buddhahood in your present form. They're all teachings that say you'll attain Buddhahood sometime way, way, way down the road. All I need to do is nudge you along, pat you on the head, and let you suffer through those many existences. Okay? They are lacking in a sense of fatherly sternness, because that fatherly sternness is the training of the Gohonzon in your life that allows you to do human revolution, that allows you to achieve actual Ichinen Sanzen. Do you understand? That's what he's going to talk about here. It is only the Tendai Lotus school that combines a sense of both love and sternness. That was from the great teacher Dingyo. The mother-like nature of the Buddha refers to an infinite motherly kindness. We can find examples of this aspect of the Buddha's compassion in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings too. But Dingyo asserts that these other sutras convey only a sense of love and are lacking in a sense of fatherly sternness, adding that the Lotus Sutra alone combines a sense of both love and sternness. Not just sternness, both. In other words, the compassion of the Lotus Sutra naturally embodies an infinite kindness resembling a mother's love, because the only thing you care about is the happiness of others. At the same time, you know what it's going to take for them to do that. And that's where the sternness comes in. At the same time, since this sutra does away with expedient means, it doesn't tell you nice little beautiful pretty things to keep you going, like the parable of Phantom City, right? It actually tells you the truth of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Buddhism of the sowing, and the fact that you're already a Buddha exactly as you are. At the same time, since this sutra does away with expedient means and clearly and precisely reveals the true means for all to attain Buddhahood, it also inevitably contains an uncompromising strictness with regard to the law, because it's going to allow you to attain Buddhahood in a single lifetime. Do you understand? All right, this is an aspect of the Lotus Sutra's compassion not found in other sutras, because none of the other ones will do that. Right? The strictness or rigor we find here arises out of the desire to reveal the mystic law as the universal seed of Buddhahood. The strictness or rigor we find here arises out of the compassion to undergo whatever is necessary to be the living example to bring people along with you and encourage them that they can do the same thing you've done. All right? As such, it is strictness to enable all people to attain enlightenment. It is also an expression of compassion to make the law available to all, because it shows you as a regular, normal person, not some special, godlike, perfect person that they can never be. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's why Buddhas appear that are all equal as Buddhas, but they appear with superior, intermediate, or inferior capacity. Why would a Buddha appear with inferior capacity? Because of a dependent origination. Do you understand?
Yes.
Not because of a lack of fortune or they're third class. They're Buddha third class. In order to clarify who possesses this compassion, which combines both love and sternness, Nichiren discusses the three virtues, sovereign, teacher, and parent, in the opening of the eyes. The identity of that person is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, all right? The original teacher, who battles slander of the correct teaching and spreads the mystic law as the seed of Buddhahood for the enlightenment of all people of the latter day. It is none other than the Daishonin himself. Let's save a detailed examination of the sovereign teacher and parent of the Buddhism of sowing, the Buddha of the latter day of the law, for later. In this chapter, we'll examine the passages relating to the subject of shakabuku, a method of expounding Buddhism by refuting another's attachment to erroneous teachings, which constitutes the last major focus of the opening of the eyes and forms the basis for the Daishonin's subsequent conclusion regarding sovereign, teacher, and parent. So let's prepare ourselves for what he's going to say. The parable of the poor woman revisited. In his writings, Nichiren outlined the spirit necessary for votaries of the Lotus Sutra to attain Buddhahood, citing the Nirvana Sutra's parable of the poor woman who gives up her life to protect her child. We discussed that last week, remember?
Yes.
We saw him telling his disciples that as long as they maintain strong, doubt-free faith, no matter what difficulties may arise, then they will, as a matter of course, attain Buddhahood. Okay, and why do those difficulties arise? Because of the karma of the practitioner. Okay?
Yes.
Now, let's once again turn once again to the cause that enabled the poor woman to gain great benefit without seeking it. We are told that this benefit was due to her concentrating on one thing, namely thinking of nothing but her child. The Daishonin says that this single-minded focus is similar to the Buddhist practice of concentration, while her selfless concern for her child resembles Buddhist compassion. In addition, he likens the poor woman's efforts to protect her child through all adversity to maintaining unswerving faith in the Lotus Sutra and never succumbing to doubts in the face of obstacles. He also compares the poor woman's rebirth in the Brahma heaven to attaining Buddhahood through persevering in faith. I'm going to read that again. These are all the aspects that parable parallels. He says, now let's turn again, bottom of page 153 on the right column at the last paragraph. Now let's turn once again to the cause that enabled the poor woman to gain great benefit without seeking it. Think of these things as I list them off. We're told that this benefit was due to her concentrating on one thing, namely thinking of nothing but her child, the focus on the attainment of Buddhahood, which is the focus of the attainment of your mission. The Daishonin says that this single-minded focus is similar to the Buddhist practice of concentration to attain Buddhahood in one's present form, while her selfless concern for her child resembles compassion. Why? Well, how does that resemble compassion? Her selfless concern for her child. That's the same as the Buddhas that reappear in the Sahe world for the sake of making all others equal to themselves, right?
Right. Yeah.
Total compassion. In addition, he likens the poor woman's efforts to protect her child through all adversity to maintaining unswerving faith in the Lotus Sutra and never succumbing to doubts in the face of the obstacles. He's saying that's mugi washing, right?
Right.
He also compares the poor woman's rebirth in the Brahma heaven to attaining Buddhahood through that mugi washing. Get it? All right. To have unceasing faith in all people's potential to attain enlightenment is itself true compassion. And shakabuku can be seen as the primary practical means for implementing or giving expression to this compassion, because it's the only way that you can stop them from the slander they're already engaged in and inject the truth that you've gone to the effort and trouble to learn. That's why you have mentors. You have mentors in order to be the mentor, not to be the disciple. You don't find mentors in order to be the disciple. That's a function of you becoming the mentor. Do you understand? That's the passive, play it forward part of all this. All right? To have unceasing faith in all people's potential to gain enlightenment is a self-true compassion. And shakabuku can be seen as the primary practical means for implementing or giving expression to this compassion. Put another way, the practice of shakabuku is indispensable to attaining Buddhahood. Do you understand what I just said there? Mm-hmm. If you just sit there and are a nice guy, you never want to ruffle anybody's feathers, you will never attain Buddhahood in your present form. And you have slandered the correct teaching. He's going to make that very clear. Yes. You didn't not only not do what you were supposed to do, you just did something to yourself that you're not aware you did. You thought you made it easy on yourself by not bringing forth everybody's shit, by keeping your mouth shut. No, you slandered the law, and you will pay. There's retribution for that, right? He says, where am I? Clarifying the true spirit of shakabuku. The true spirit of shakabuku. Nietzsche refuted the doctrines of the Nembutsu and Zen schools of his day as slander of the law for their encouraging people to discard the Lotus Sutra. That's why they were slander of the law. He condemned them as teachings that cause people to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. Here in the opening of the eyes, he begins his discussion on the subject of shakabuku by asking whether his repudiation of these other schools reflects a contentious heart and a state of life verging on the realm of the asuras, the world of anger. Further, he brings up the questioner's assertion that the heavenly deities have presumably abandoned him because in his insistence on pursuing shakabuku, refutation, he is ignoring the passage from the Peaceful Practices 14th chapter Lotus Sutra that says you should not delight in speaking of the faults of others or scriptures. And in my estimation, should not delight means you're doing it for the sake of animality. You're not doing it for the sake of compassion. Do you understand? When you take delight in refutation, that delight is shouldn't be for the purpose of showing people how much you know. It shouldn't be samibo kind of thing. Do you understand? You know what I meant by that? Samibo? You know, everybody knows samibo?
No.
Okay, samibo was a priest that was initially somebody that the Daishonin thought very highly of because he was a Tendai priest and he understood the doctrine of Tendai school, and so he was very easily taught along the lines of the Daishonin's teaching the Lotus Sutra. He actually was then asked by the Daishonin to represent him at certain debates. At one particular debate, he got in a debate with a priest. When he came back and he gave the Daishonins his report on that debate. By the way, that debate is the debate that got Shijo Kingo in trouble, okay, with his lord, because they reported that he had been disruptive during that debate and disrespectful. But moreover, what occurred was that Samibo, in his report to the Daishonin, was like fawning all over the people that he'd been speaking to, and the Daishonin goes, dude, you didn't get it at all. You know, the teaching that I've taught you is so far superior to anything that they have to say. You should not be looking at them like that. Wow, I was so honored to go teach them. So he really gives Samibo like a little bit of a dressing down for his incorrect attitude, and one that even kind of like honors them more than his teacher Nichiren. And he's kind of like, shh. So what happened? Samibo really was in it for the gloss. He was in it to be a rock star. He wasn't in it for the right reason. He eventually opposed the Daishonin. He not only quit practicing, he opposed the Daishonin, and he died a very terrible death. Okay? Yes. Cause and effect. All right? But the Daishonin has always used Samibo as the example of somebody that starts out with what looks like absolute, clear, devout faith. I mean, we could say the same thing in the Soka Gakkai. Don't forget, the biggest individual that attacked the Soka Gakkai during the initial skirmish with the priesthood was the head of the Soka Gakkai study department. All right? So this isn't like anybody's impervious. Don't think that, okay, from this level up, everybody's okay. And no. This is, you are supposed to be watching constantly with constant vigilance for these kinds of things and standing up to what you know to be true whenever you think it is. Regardless of who it is that you're standing up to. That's what he's saying here, right now. Okay? And I'll read you I'll give you Samibo out of the dictionary in a minute. Okay. Genuine Buddhism does not promote a utopia existing in some imaginary realm. All right? On the contrary, it is a philosophy that seeks to enable us to transform reality and live an ideal life right here in this troubled Sahe world. It seeks to empower us, to help us develop the spiritual strength and inner fortitude with which to overcome all storms as we struggle amid the reality of our daily lives. You with me? Mm-hmm. The essence of Buddhism, in a sense, is not to seek the placid existence of a still pond, but to establish a towering state of happiness that not even the stormiest seas can destroy. Was that a giggle I heard there?
Yeah. We empty it.
Self-reflecting, yeah. Though we might wish for a humble happiness where nothing untoward ever occurs, it is impossible to avoid being buffeted by life's winds and waves when storms howl. Mm-hmm. Indeed, it is only by bringing forth our inherent strength, it is only by bringing forth our Buddha nature to make our way dauntlessly through the maelstrom of fundamental darkness and karma that we can secure true happiness. Maybe that again. Indeed, it is only by bringing forth our inherent strength to make our way dauntlessly through the maelstrom of fundamental darkness and karma that we can secure true happiness. So what did he just say? It's up to you. Nobody's going to do this for you, and if you don't do it for you, you're not going to do it. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
But you can do it.
But you can do it, without doubt.
That's the point.
That is the point, and that's why it's hard. Because if it wasn't hard for each person that achieves it, they could not have empathy and compassion for those that are actually seeking to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Nor could they have the wisdom to guide them and give them the strength to persevere through those times when they're being challenged. In that respect, happiness is found only amid struggle. Because in that respect, happiness is only found amid struggle. Buddhahood is only found amid struggle. Okay, that's what he's saying. Do you understand? In that respect, Buddhahood is found only amid struggle. Do you understand what he just said? All right, building genuine happiness for oneself and others, that is being the Buddha, necessarily entails battling erroneous thinking and mistaken beliefs that lead people to misery. He says necessarily. Yeah? Because why? Because that's why you are the Buddha. That's why you came. Right? That's the reason you manifest in the Sahe world as a bodhisattva, to become the Buddha. Building genuine happiness for oneself and others, being the Buddha, necessarily entails battling erroneous thinking and mistaken beliefs that lead people to misery, because that's what you came to do. This is what the practice of Shakabuku is all about. Right? It's all very clear, correct?
Yes.
All right. In response to the criticism that Shakabuku involves a contentious heart and leads to one falling into the realm of asuras, being angry, Nichiren explains that Shakabuku is an expression of compassion and the will to fight evil. This, in turn, is the spirit of the Buddha. This, in turn, is the spirit of the Buddha. Therefore, Shakabuku is a practice at one with the Buddha's heart and intent, and represents the way of bodhisattva practice of the latter day of the law. That's what we do. It represents the way of bodhisattva practice. It means that is what you do to practice as a bodhisattva of the earth in the latter day of the law to attain Buddhahood in your present form. Do you understand? Shoju and Shakabuku. Rejecting the accusation that Shakabuku involves a contentious heart, the Daishonin first explains that Buddhist practice includes two methods of propagation, shoju, or gentle encouragement, and shakabuku, or strict refutation. He thus indicates that shakabuku is a legitimate form of Buddhist practice. He points out, however, that since the two propagation methods are exact opposites, those who practice one often tend to reject the other. The practitioner of shoju laughs with scorn at shakabuku. The practitioner of shakabuku laments at the thought of shoju. I'm of the latter part. Here we see the fundamental illusion of egoism at work, giving rise to misguided attachments that lead one to resent and negate the position of others. Let me read that again. Here we see the fundamental illusion of egoism at work, giving rise to misguided attachments. What are the misguided attachments? Plural. To the attachment to the method of propagation of shoju, or the attachment of to the method of propagation of shakabuku. Okay, that's what he's saying. Because the emphasis here is the Lotus Sutra is teaching us it's both. Right? It's not one or the other. It's what's necessary at any given moment based on your Buddha wisdom to understand how to encourage people. I have to speak in expedience myself all the time, even though I'm the first one to say you should nail them. Okay? Because when I'm speaking in expedience, it's to encourage the truth. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. Here we see the fundamental illusion of egoism at work, giving rise to misguided attachments that lead one to resent and negate the position of others. Nichiren concludes that both shoju and shakabuku are legitimate ways of spreading the Buddhist teaching, and says, citing the great teacher Tentai, the method chosen should be that which accords with the time. He then offers the following guidelines for deciding which is appropriate. When the country is full of evil people without wisdom, then shoju is the primary method to be applied, as described in the Peaceful Practices chapter. But at a time when there are many people of perverse views who slander the law, like thousands of people with purple sweatshirts on, goddammit, then shakabuku should come first, as described in the Never Disparaging chapter. Do you understand? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Purple-shirted people. The question put to the Daishonin earlier cited a passage from the Peaceful Practices chapter to imply that his active refutation of the other Buddhist schools departed from the spirit of the Lotus Sutra. But this is simply based on a shallow, fragmentary understanding of the sutra that does not take into account its teaching as a whole. The practice set forth in Peaceful Practices, in which one does not address the faults of other schools or their teachers and followers, is to be carried out when the country is filled with evil people without wisdom. That is, people ignorant of Buddhism. In contrast, shakabuku is the preferred method when the country is filled with people of perverse views who slander the law. Let me read that again. This is why, Mom, back in America, we do it one way, and we would do it a different way here with the purple shirts.
Right.
The practice set forth in Peaceful Practices, in which one does not address the faults of other schools or their teachers and followers, is to be carried out when the country is filled with evil people without wisdom. That's people with no understanding or perception of Buddhist teaching. All right? That, like America, for instance. Okay? That is people ignorant of Buddhism. They're ignorant of it. They don't even know what the hell it is. You know, they think it's Buddha's another God thing. You know, they think we're all going to hell, right? According to Judeo-Christianity, right? They don't really think too much about Buddhism, all right? They're more opposed to each other's denominations. In contrast, shakabuku is the preferred method when the country is filled with people of perverse views who slander the law. Now, what's slandering the law? Utilizing Buddhism, incorrect teaching, right? Purple shirts, right? That country. That's where we do shakabuku, here, all right? In the Lotus Sutra, this latter situation is illustrated through the example of Bodhisattva never disparaging versus peaceful practices. Do you get it? Who, in a chapter named after him, in the Bodhisattva never disparaging chapter, is depicted as persevering in his practice of venerating others, even when attacked with sticks of wood or tiles and stones. Bodhisattva never disparaging's practice consisted of bowing to others in reverence and greeting them with words that make up what is known as the 24-character Lotus Sutra. And you all know what I'm talking about, right? I would never, you will all eventually attain Buddhahood. A distillation of the Lotus Sutra's core teaching that all people possess the Buddha nature. Everybody with it? Yeah. That's why the Daishonin compares himself to this practice. He did not waver in his conviction even when he encountered negative reactions and persecution from people of overbearing arrogance among the four kinds of believers, monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. His bold, unremitting efforts to proclaim the truth, even though they didn't accept, did any of them accept it when he first spoke it? No. His bold, unremitting efforts to proclaim the truth are comparable to refuting people's misguided and erroneous beliefs. Everybody with me? Yeah. Okay. Accordingly, the never disparaging chapter of the Lotus Sutra teaches the practice of shakabuku. But it had never been defined as such until the Daishonin does so in order to incorporate it into the Buddhism of the sowing, which is really what it's there for in the first place. Do you understand? In the Buddhism of the harvest, there's really no reason to do refutation because all the schools believe that they're all on the same superhighway. They're just different lanes. Do you understand? The Lotus Sutra says, no, that was all an expedient means. I got news for you. You either do it this way or it's the highway. You're never going to get there. Please trust this teaching because this teaching is telling the truth. Do you understand? That's why there was no refutation necessary prior to the Lotus Sutra. Shakabuku was not necessary until the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, and then specifically the Buddhism of the sowing, because now we got to refute the whole Buddhism of the harvest, don't we? Right? All the purple shirts, they're Buddhists. Right? Okay. Where am I? Here. Determining? Okay. Determining the method of propagation according to the age. As we have seen, it all depends on the age as to which propagation method should be used. What we are speaking of here is not the historical time period, but rather the prevailing nature of the times or overall tendencies found in a particular society as shaped by its dominant ideas and belief systems, its citizens' attitudes and outlooks, and its existing social conditions and general environment. Let us look at the conditions of the Daishonin's day as described in this treatise. Popular were schools such as the True Word and Flower Garland, which had surreptitiously appropriated the Lotus Sutra doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, incorporating the concept but failing to put it into practice. Everybody knows? Everybody sing there? Mm-hmm. They stuck it in as doctrine, but they didn't say how to use it or what it was good for, and it was worthless as a result in regard to those practices. Also enjoying wide support were schools such as Nembutsu and Zen, which urged people to cast aside the Lotus Sutra. Right? Yes. Everybody understands that. Confusion reigned as to which were true and which were the provisional teachings of Buddhism, resulting in the Buddhist teachings of enlightenment for all people being obscured. Do you understand? A lot of people were being turned away from the source of the Buddhist teaching of enlightenment. What is the Buddhist teaching of enlightenment? The Lotus Sutra. Okay? Nichiren also cites another major problem that existed at that time. Individuals whose duty it should have been to protect the correct teaching of the Lotus Sutra instead contributed to Buddhism's denigration. He's specifically speaking of Mount Hei, right? He writes in scathing reproof, the learned priests of the Tendai and True Word schools fawn on the lay supporters of the Nembutsu and Zen schools the way a dog wags its tail before its master, or fear them the way a mouse fears a cat. Why? One of the things, don't forget, who's taken on Zen and Nembutsu? The shogunate. It's easy. It's easy, right? It's the warrior class are the ones that are being converted to Zen. All right? He further notes that the teaching these men preach to the ruler and other officials of the land will result in both the destruction of Buddhism and the ruin of the country. That's why he's got the 4 dictums, right? Everybody knows what I mean when I say the 4 dictums, right? Nembutsu leads to the hell of incessant sufferings and yada yada precepts, yada yada. Right, okay? The widespread confusion about the correct teaching, he asserts, bodes ill for the country's future and is also the fundamental cause of the sufferings that afflict people throughout the land. Which of the 2 methods of propagation, Shoju or Shakubuku, is appropriate is determined by the time. In a time like the Daishonen's, to just stand idly by and not speak out and address such wrongs would signify both spiritual defeat as a Buddhist and spiritual death as a person of religious conviction. Whoa. Those are strong words. Take them to heart. The Tendai and True Word priests' failure to defend Buddhism when it was imperiled shows that they did not understand this point, and as such acted against the Buddhist spirit. They divorced themselves from the real world, instead retiring to mountain forests to carry out their solitary meditation practices. The Daishonin declares that they are destined to fall into the realm of hungry spirits, the world of hunger, in their present existence, and in their next find themselves in the hell of incessant suffering. He rebukes them for their error, asking how they can possibly free themselves from the suffering of life and death. Thus, the Japan of Nichiren's time was widely populated with priests who were hostile to the Lotus Sutra. Followers of these priests and professed practitioners of the Lotus Sutra did not challenge those who sought to destroy the correct teaching. Their combined negative influences were so pervasive that it poisoned the entire land with perverse views who slander the law. Such circumstances compelled genuine votaries of the Lotus Sutra to stand up and fight to defend the correct teaching. That's what Shakabuku is. Not only, that's what refutation is, right? You're standing up and you're fighting to defend the correct teaching. Not only is such action vital for opening the path to enlightenment for all people, but it is also the only way to carry out the Buddha's admonitions. In other words, it's the only way to attain Buddhahood yourself. Wisdom that guides people to happiness is identical to Buddha wisdom, Buddhist wisdom. The Lotus Sutra embodies universal values. It is a teaching that expounds the dignity and equality of all people. Expounds the dignity and equality of all people. The sutras, other than the Lotus Sutra, also to some degree present concepts and forms of practice that indicate the inherent nobility and preciousness of human beings. When these sutras are approached based on a firm grasp of the Lotus Sutra, we can also utilize their wisdom freely and appropriately. That's called the perfect teaching, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And it exists in the whole thing. But you've got to have the Buddhism and the sowing to be able to perceive the Buddhism and the harvest correctly. It's the latter day of the law now. Otherwise, you will not perceive the Buddhism and the harvest, the teachings of the Buddhism and the harvest correctly. Are you with me? As seen in the doctrine of the unification of the teachings, the Lotus Sutra is an all-encompassing scripture that brings all Buddhist teachings within its fold. For that reason, it continues to tower, even today, as an unparalleled teaching of humanism. At the same time, the Lotus Sutra teaches that if anti-humanistic influences should arise in the realm of Buddhism, and if they were to distort the spirit of the Lotus Sutra, then its practitioners should actively and thoroughly repudiate such error. That means even if you see it today within the organization that this guy leads, okay? He doesn't qualify it, does he? He doesn't say outside of the Soka Gakkai, does he? He's talking about practitioners. So let's read that again. He says, for that reason, at the same time, the Lotus Sutra teaches that if anti-humanistic influences should arise in the realm of Buddhism, inclusive within the lay organization, the Soka Gakkai, and if they were to distort the spirit of the Lotus Sutra, as you understand it to be correctly understood, then its practitioners, what does that mean? The people that are actually trying to do what it says to do. Not just reading and smiling and, oh, that's good to know. No, the people that are doers, the people that are being the Buddha, should actively and thoroughly repudiate such error. Actively and thoroughly repudiate such error. The sutra predicts that those who practice and propagate the correct teaching in the evil age of the latter day will inevitably face struggles against individuals that are doing this shit. Against individuals and groups that will persecute and attack them. Because they're not going to be happy when you say, oh, by the way, I think maybe. Various chapters warn that they will have to battle manifestations of fundamental darkness and arrogance. 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 For instance, the teacher of the law, 10th chapter states, since hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the world, how much more will this be the case? How much more so will this be so after his passing? That applies to us too right now. And there are also lengthy descriptions set forth in the form of the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts in the treasure tower, the 11th chapter, and the 3 powerful enemies in encouraging devotion, the 13th chapter. We see the same duality in the practice of Shakabuku in Nichiren Buddhism. On the one hand, it demands a rigorous struggle against those who spread erroneous teachings that distort Buddhism and cause people suffering. On the other, it possesses the broad-mindedness to try to find commonalities between Buddhism and philosophies and belief systems that likewise value human beings and put their welfare first. Everybody understands that? Mm-hmm. Okay. As an example of this, in one writing, Nichiren acclaims several statesmen in ancient China who worked for the happiness of their subjects or compatriots prior to Buddhism's transmission from India. He writes, though these men lived before the introduction of Buddhism, they helped the people as emissaries of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. The wisdom of such men contained at heart the wisdom of Buddhism. Does everybody understand what I just said? Thus, the Daishonin indicates that wisdom that guides people to happiness is identical to the wisdom of Buddhism. Why does President Ikeda quote Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, Descartes, how do you pronounce it? Descartes, whoever. He quotes all kinds of people like that, right? He doesn't just have like... So that's what he just said here. He says, pardon me, we see the same duality in the practice of Shakabuku and Nichiren Buddhism. On the one hand, it demands a rigorous struggle against those who spread erroneous teachings that distort Buddhism and cause people suffering. Do you understand what he's saying there? He's saying make one distinction, erroneous teachings of Buddhism. He says, on the other hand, it possesses the broad-mindedness to try to find commonalities between Buddhism and philosophies and belief systems that likewise value human beings and put their welfare first. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. That's what he's talking about. There have been many efforts at this correct thinking, but they've never been qualified in the correct thinking of the Lotus Sutra that allows you to be the Buddha. There's no reason to refute Walt Whitman talking about humanism. Mm. The point is humanism. That's what he's trying to say here. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. That's the point. There are other things outside of Nichiren Buddhism that parallel the same sense. Mm. That doesn't make them the correct teaching. Yes. But it doesn't make them subject to refutation either. Yes. Because their thought process parallels the thought process of the correct teaching. Do you understand? That's why we can use them as examples to help encompass and bring people of other thinking into the realm of the correct teaching. Yes. Do you understand? We're not just constantly attacking every single person, no matter who they are, just because they don't think what we think. No. All right? As an example of this, in one of his writings, okay, I already read that. Thus, the Daishonin indicates that wisdom that guides people to happiness is identical to the wisdom of Buddhism. To conduct Shakabuku is to carry out the Buddhist practice of compassion, to remove suffering and impart joy. Above all, Shakabuku is founded on a profound and embracing respect for all people. Subsequently, our efforts in this sphere will not be successful unless we have deep respect for those we seek to guide toward the correct teaching, as all of us who have earnestly undertaken this challenge keenly recognize. So what did he just say? Consequently, our efforts in this sphere of refutation for the correct reason, not to express our superior intellect and capacity, but to eliminate incorrect thinking, misconceptions of Buddhism. Do you understand? He's saying, consequently, our cannot be successful unless we have deep respect for those we seek to guide toward the correct teaching. So if we're sitting there and we're placating them and we're being condescending and we're acting like we know everything and they don't know anything, and boy, are they lucky to know us, we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. He's saying we'll not be successful unless we have deep respect. We have to respect them as human beings.
Right. Yes.
Okay? And that we see, as all of us who have earnestly already done this already know, is what he's saying. In view of this, Shakabuku is definitely not motivated by a contentious heart or other aggressive negative emotions. Because of this, it is not in any way exclusivist or self-righteous. The heart of Shakabuku is compassion. Mm-hmm. It is also the spirit to refute error because of the suffering it causes, a spirit that transforms our compassion into the courage to fight against that which is wrong. When there is serious confusion regarding the Buddhist teachings in which people place their faith, with mistaken beliefs and tenets imperiling the spiritual welfare of society, nothing could be farther from Buddhist compassion than not taking action to rectify the situation. Okay? Now, these people that you guys tell me that you're talking to, they aren't talking to me, so I don't have the ability to say something to them. Do you understand what I'm referring to? You're always coming back to me, yeah, but local. Read what I just said. When there is serious confusion regarding Buddhist teachings in which people place their faith, which is what I'm hearing expressed to me, all right, with mistaken beliefs and tenets, imperiling their spiritual welfare because they're going to lose faith because they don't get the result that they expect. The spiritual welfare of society, nothing could be farther from Buddhist compassion than not taking action to rectify the situation. Okay? The schools that spread such confusion have forgotten Buddhism's original spirit of working for the people's welfare and helping them gain enlightenment. If their errors were allowed to go unchallenged, it would only plunge people into even greater suffering. Such permissiveness may seem like moderation and tolerance, free of any hint of a contentious heart, but remaining passive when faced with error is actually an extremely grave offense. Daisaku Ikeda just said that. I'll say it again. What time is it? That's about that time. All right. Mm-hmm. Such permissiveness may seem like moderation and tolerance, free of any hint of a contentious heart, but remaining passive when faced with error is actually an extremely grave offense. Yeah, I can do it because this is important. I want to tie all this together. So going on page 159. This is from Chang'an. This is one of my favorite sayings. If one befriends another person but lacks the mercy to correct him, one is in fact his enemy. I have known this. This is in the Gosho. I read the Gosho 40 some odd years ago, and that always stuck out. That made so much sense to me. What he's basically saying is, if you don't correct somebody that you know is doing things that are going to destroy their own happiness, you're not their friend.
Right.
You are in fact their enemy. You could have helped them. You could have at least minimized what they might experience by at least making the effort to correct their incorrect thinking. But instead, you just kind of went, I don't want to deal with this shit. Just go ahead. I already know how it's going to turn out. You don't do that. You're their enemy if you're willing to do that.
Right.
Question: when you berate the followers of Nimbutsu and Zen and of the Nimbutsu and Zen schools and arouse their enmity, what merit does that bring? Answer: the Nirvana Sutra says if even a good monk who sees someone destroying the teaching and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then you should realize that that monk is betraying the Buddha's teaching. But if he ousts the destroyer of the law, if he reproaches him or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. In other words, he's heard the teaching, he understands the teaching. The great teacher of China, Chang'an, comments on this as follows. One who destroys or brings confusion. One who destroys or brings confusion to the Buddha's teachings is betraying them. If one befriends another person but lacks the mercy to correct him, one is in fact his enemy. But one who reprimands and corrects an offender is a voice hearer who defends the Buddha's teachings, a true disciple of the Buddha. One who rids the offender of evil is acting as his parent. Those who reproach offenders are disciples of the Buddha. But those who do not oust offenders are betraying the Buddha's teaching. Understand this is a very important point. In the opening of the eyes, Nichiren employs the above exchange to underline the enormous importance of the Shakabuku spirit in addressing errors in the realm of Buddhism. This section begins with a question. When you berate the followers of Nimbutsu and Zen schools and arouse their enmity, you piss them off. What merit does that bring? In response, the Daishonin addresses the issue by citing a Nirvana Sutra passage in which Shakyamuni declares that any of his disciples who do not engage in a rigorous struggle to reproach, oust, or punish those who destroy the correct teaching are enemies of Buddhism, whereas those who undertake the struggle are his true disciples and true voice hearers who defend the law. The Daishonin then further cites a passage from On the Nirvana Sutra by Chang'an, a disciple of Tentai, who actually again wrote, which states that whoever acts as a false friend and lacks the compassion to correct those who destroy the Buddha's teachings is in fact an enemy. These passages make it clear that Shakabuku is an act of compassion. True compassion means to awaken people from the darkness of ignorance or illusion that destroys their lives to fundamentally free them from suffering. Shakabuku is an irrepressible action. What does irrepressible mean? It springs forth from your life. You can't stop yourself. When you're in this life condition, Shakabuku comes out because of your Buddha wisdom. You're the Buddha. It's irrepressible. Shakabuku is an irrepressible action that arises from faith and compassion. Okay? That's when it's real Shakabuku. Otherwise, it's just, I know so much shit. In the opening of the eyes, Nichiren writes, if someone is about to kill your father and mother, shouldn't you try to warn them? If you had a bad son who's insane with drink, is threatening to kill his mother and father, shouldn't you try to stop him? If some evil person is about to set fire to the temples and pagodas, shouldn't you try to stop him? If your only child is gravely ill, shouldn't you try to cure him or her with moxibustion treatment? Hypocrisy is the exact opposite of compassion, especially the hypocrisy of knowing when wrong is being committed in the realm of Buddhism, but doing nothing to address it. If such hypocrisy prevails, lies and pretense will become the norm, and no one will speak the truth. This will ultimately lead to the spiritual and moral decay of society. Without a sound spiritual underpinning like that provided by a humanistic religion, the fabric of society will crumble. If erroneous teachings spread to where they enslave and exploit people, they will exert a harmful and poisonous effect on people's hearts and minds. That is why the Daishonin stresses the importance of steadfastly and resolutely battling the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. He writes, even those with profound faith do not reproach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. However great the good cause... Okay, let me start again. He writes, even those with profound faith do not approach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. However great the good causes one may make, or even if one reads and copies the entirety of the Lotus Sutra 1,000 or 10,000 times, or attains the way of perceiving 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, if one fails to denounce the enemies of the Lotus Sutra, it will be impossible to attain the way. Shakabuku, an act of supreme compassion, is a lion's roar directed toward the goal of reviving the goodness in people's hearts and bringing dynamic vitality and creativity to society for the benefit of all. It is a spiritual struggle of the loftiest dimension, one that seeks to conquer devilish function. Break through darkness and delusion and actualize true lasting happiness for mankind at Kosen Rufu. And it is empowered by a fighting spirit that resembles that of a fearless lion king, because you're in it as the Buddha. This struggle enables us to forge an indestructible diamond-like state of life. What is that? That is actual Ichinen Sanzen. That is being the Buddha in your present form. This struggle enables us to forge an indestructible diamond-like state of life, being the Buddha in our present form, not theoretically, actually. Citing the Nirvana Sutra, the Daishonin notes that obtaining a diamond-like body, attaining actual Ichinen Sanzen, is the benefit of practicing Shakabuku. Being the Buddha is the benefit of practicing Shakabuku. By embarking on this compassionate struggle, we can rid our own lives of the rust of inertia, carelessness, and cowardice, the dull patina that prevents our true brilliance from shining forth. Do you know what patina is? Mm-hmm. When you leave a house very painted and you never repaint it, and it kind of like changes colors and it gets kind of a distinguished look rather than a rundown look, that's called patina. Okay? So the dull patina that prevents our true brilliance from shining forth. Those who tap the depths of their wisdom and persevere in their efforts to lead even one person to happiness can break through the binding chains of all can break through the binding chains of all kinds of preconceived ideas and prejudices and defeat the alienating ignorance of disbelief and disrespect. Those you are shakabukuing. Do you understand? Those who battle negativity and delusions, who do shakabuku, can cleanse and polish their lives with a purifying stream that washes away spiritual decay. That's what shakabuku does for you. Mm-hmm. They can develop an infinitely vast and expansive state of life that desires the happiness of all humanity, because they express that desire in a true form. Moreover, those who remain committed to this cause can create the most wonderful and everlasting memories of their lives in this human world. Because you kick ass, and you kick ass, and you kick ass, and you kick ass, and you kick ass. You're never defeated if you do this. You're never, ever, ever defeated. You cannot be defeated if you do this. The glory of a life dedicated to Kosen Rufu is found in the midst of tireless struggle. God damn it, I wish it weren't that way, but that is the way it is. The indestructible, diamond-like state of being we attain through winning resolutely in every challenge for Kosen Rufu not only adorns our lives in this present existence, but will shine on for all eternity. End of chapter 16. Thank you. We start chapter 17, 161 next time.
So charged.
Thank you.
Thank you.